So you've been thinking about leaving California? Maybe it's the costs, maybe it's the crowds, or maybe you just have this feeling that there's something out there that's better for you in your life. And maybe Portland keeps coming up on your list. I get it, I've had this conversation with so many people in the past that have been considering leaving California and moving up to the Portland area. In this video, I'm going to give you the honest, real picture of what it looks like to make the move here, with some pros and cons and some trade-offs, and exactly what to expect when you get here. Real quick, and before I get into it, I've had this conversation dozens of times with people who are making the move from California to Portland, and they all have really similar questions. So if you're in that position right now, whether you're thinking about it seriously or just kicking the tires, I'm happy to be a resource. There's a link in the description for my relocation guide. Give it a look, it's free. Okay, so let's get into it. Okay, so let's start with the why. Because you're watching this video, you obviously don't need me to sell you on why you might be considering leaving California. You've already got your reasons. But I want to validate a few of them because they're real. The number one driver that I hear when I talk to Californians is the cost of living, and specifically housing costs. If you've been in California, let's say the Bay Area, San Diego, or LA for any amount of time, you know what the dollar does and doesn't buy there. In Portland, the math is significantly different. We'll get into the specifics in a minute, but the short version is you can get significantly more home for your money here. The second thing I hear about is the pace of life. Portland is a real city. We've got great culture and restaurants and an incredible food scene, walkable neighborhoods, but it doesn't feel like you're constantly running from one thing to another or in your car. Traffic is real here too, but it surely isn't LA or San Francisco. The third thing worth noting, I think, is the access to nature. I know California is a gem as well, but you aren't giving up nature access by moving here. And with the traffic being significantly better here than in the big cities of California, it can be easier to get to. You're about an hour and a half from the Oregon coast and Mount Hood, about just 30 minutes from the Columbia River Gorge, and about an hour from the rolling hills of the Oregon wine country. There are incredible parks right here in town, as well as the Willamette River and the Columbia River, among many other rivers. If that kind of access to nature matters to you, you're likely making a lateral move at worst, if not a significant upgrade. Okay, let's talk numbers because this is where California to Portland conversation gets real. Housing first. The median home price in Portland recently has been about $550,000, a bit more or less depending on what time of the year we're in. This is obviously a meaningful difference from California metros right now. Right now, Zillow has the Bay Area at about $1 million median home price, LA at about $970,000, and San Diego at $915,000. So that's about 40 to 45% savings on housing alone, which is obviously a pretty big part of most people's monthly expenses. If you're coming from Sacramento or other areas of the state that aren't as highly priced, the difference could be much smaller or even negligible, but I think it's safe to say in general that Portland and Oregon is a less expensive area than California in terms of properties. As for taxes, both states are in the higher end of the range for income taxes, but it really depends on what tax bracket you're in, so you can do some investigation into your specific situation for a true comparison. One thing that's different is Oregon doesn't have a sales tax, so you'll see a fairly significant savings in Oregon on that end. Property taxes in Oregon are generally a little bit lower than California. Measure 5 caps them here, but California's Prop 13 protections can make the comparison tricky depending on how long you've owned your current home. The bottom line is most California transplants that I've worked with have found the financial picture here in Portland significantly better than where they came from. Let's chat if you have any questions about the cost of living differences between California and Portland, or check out my cost of living in Oregon in 2026 video that I just released. I'll link to it below in the description. Okay, now let's talk about neighborhoods because the Portland Metro isn't just one thing, it's really a collection of a lot of distinct communities, and where you land matters. If you come from a place that values walkability and food and energy, think somewhere like Silver Lake or the Mission District, you're probably going to feel home in the inner east side of Portland. That's North Portland, Northeast, and Southeast Portland, and streets like Hawthorne, Alberta Arts, and Mississippi Avenue. These blocks where you walk out your door and everything you need is right there. Great restaurants, independent shops, coffee on every corner, and the housing stock is largely early 20th century bungalows and craftsmen with tree-lined streets. If you want a quieter pace and more space, I would point you to southwest or northwest Portland outside of the urban core and into the suburbs. The suburbs tend to have higher rated schools in the city, though there are some great school options within the city as well, and it really depends on what your priorities are. If you want something urban, let's say walkable, lock and leave condo lifestyle with low maintenance responsibilities, close to restaurants and the arts, the Pearl District, downtown Portland, South Waterfront, and Northwest 23rd District are excellent options. Vancouver, Washington, and those surrounding communities around Vancouver have a lot to offer as well. One of the big benefits about that area is there's no state income tax in Washington, so if you live and work there, that can create big tax savings for you, especially if you cross the river into Oregon for some of your big purchases to take advantage of the lack of sales tax here. Okay, now here's the part of the video where I want to be really straight with you because I'd rather you know what you're getting into rather than showing up here and feeling blindsided. Okay, let's start with the weather. You've all heard about this. It is real. Portland gets about 144 days of measurable rain per year. From roughly November through March, you'll see a lot of overcast skies. This is the single biggest culture shock for California transplants that I've experienced. This is something that's actually somewhat funny to me. Those from California, Arizona, and Hawaii are usually the clients that I have that complain the most about the weather. Of course, everything is relative, and to those who have lived with a lot more sun, it can be a rough transition. Portlanders largely embrace it. The city doesn't shut down, people still bike, people still hike, still do everything outside, and we hardly use umbrellas at all because the rain is usually light enough that it's nothing a good rain jacket can't handle. But if you're someone who genuinely needs sun to function, you might want to spend some time here in the winter before you commit to the move. I will say, as someone from Chicago who moved here, I found the winters not to be that bad, but that might be because I came from somewhere where the winters are significantly worse, so take it for what it's worth. Okay, let's talk about the job market. Portland is a strong city, but it's not San Francisco or LA in terms of industry concentration and overall job opportunities. There are some big companies here, like Nike and Intel and Adidas, and we have a pretty solid startup scene, but the options are much narrower than those areas of California. If you're remote or self-employed, of course, this doesn't matter much, but if you need to find local work in a specialized field, definitely do your homework before you make the move here. Let's now talk about the political and social climate. Portland has a progressive identity that's generally part of its culture. Many of my California clients either share that sense of politics or find it pretty easy to navigate. But I think it's worth knowing that this is not a particularly politically neutral city overall. That being said, there are quite a lot of suburbs and areas within the city, and the outer areas tend to lean neutral to right, so you can definitely find your community whichever way you lean. Okay, the housing market pace. Portland is not the wild seller's market that it was in 2021 or 2022. The market is much more balanced now, which is actually good news for buyers who are coming in. But you still need to move here with the plan, as there are still a lot of areas and homes that are selling with multiple offers. Having your financing dialed in before you start shopping is still extremely important. Okay, let me close with a practical piece because this is where I can add the most amount of value. Most of my California clients do this remotely, at least initially. They're researching from a distance, maybe making 1 or 2 trips, and then making a decision on what to buy. That's totally workable, but it requires a different approach than a local buyer. Here's what the process usually looks like for a California transplant. First, you want to get clear on your financing before you do anything else. If you're selling in California, understand your timeline and what equity you might be able to pull out of your home. Knowing how much you qualify for is pretty important to know exactly what you can afford here in Portland. The second thing I would recommend you do is to pick the neighborhood or areas of town that interest you the most before you pick a house. As I mentioned, Portland's neighborhoods have pretty distinct personalities, and you don't want to fall in love with a house and then realize that the neighborhood doesn't fit your life. I can help you do that work up front. Third, ideally you'd plan a reconnaissance trip, maybe 3 or 4 days. When you're not house hunting per se, but we can look at places, take a look at neighborhoods, and really get a grasp on what your target areas are. Eat at the local spots, maybe drive your commutes, and get a feel for the pace. The people who do this generally end up being the most confident in their decision when they do find the right house. The fourth thing I would recommend is you work with someone who really knows the market specifically. You're making a significant move and you want to work with someone who's going to help you find the right place in the right area, not just whatever closes the deal. I've been in this market for over 11 years now, and I've helped a lot of California folks make this move successfully. I've also had some honest conversations with people who decided not to move to Portland and that it wasn't right for them, and I helped them figure that out before they packed up the truck. That's the kind of conversation that I'm happy to have. So if you're seriously thinking about making the move, the best thing we can do right now is start the conversation. This isn't going to be a sales conversation, it's just a conversation about what you're looking for and whether Portland actually makes sense for your situation. You can book a meeting through me below in the link in the description. If you're not quite ready to talk to anyone, that's okay too. As I mentioned earlier, I have a relocation guide for you to read through. It's totally free, link is in the description. So if you're still interested in what Portland might have to offer to you, please subscribe, keep watching, and I put out honest content about this market every week. I'm not going anywhere, so thanks for spending your time with me today, and I'll see you on the next one.